Well, over the phone, obviously, you can't read body language, even though people still have body language. I mean, they're squirming in their chair or they're shaking their head yes or no, but you can't tell that. So over the phone, you have to pay a lot more attention to tone of voice because tone of voice is going to indicate where somebody is in terms of their emotional state. Are they really into what you're talking about, or are they just dispassionate? Are they bored? Is there something else on their mind? You really have to get good at catching tone of voice. And then it becomes even more important to ask a lot of questions. Because if you can't see that person and you're not asking questions, you don't know if they're just looking off and out the window or what. But when you engage people with questions, even if they don't answer them out loud, they're always answering them in their head. And so you
Mm.
want to keep somebody in, you have to utilize questions. And Jason, to one of the questions you asked earlier about, what are some things you see that people do wrong? A lot of times people spend way too much time telling people rather than asking. And if they ask and
Mm.
that person answers for themselves, now they own it because they are the ones that put it out on the table. It wasn't pushed out on them as advice or opinion.
Can you give examples of both and the
Sure.
different ways
Um,
they're framed?
an example would be, when I would work with agents and I would say, okay, what is a reason that somebody's going to want to do business with you? Almost all the time they'll say, because we're local. And I'm like, okay, that might be a good reason. But in the world that we're in, where we can do so much over Zoom and other platforms, is that really as big a deal? So what you need to do is simply ask the question, Jason, is it important to you that, if you needed to sit down with your agent face to face for a difficult conversation, that you'd be able to do that in 20 or 30 minutes if you had to? Almost every person will say yes. And at that point, that's where you can say, that's what most of our customers appreciate about us being local, that we can sit down with them if something comes up immediately, looking them in the eye and having that conversation. But the fact that you said it now, it becomes one more trigger for you to potentially say, that's who I want to do business with. And
Mm.
whatever it is that you think is unique about your agency, and certainly uniqueness is a factor in why somebody would want to do business with you. Because if they can't get the same products or service or combination from somebody else, then that makes you more valuable. But the best way to get them to see that is by asking questions. So I would say anything that you think is a unique factor about your agency, how can you, rather than advertise it, ask a question to get people to verbalize how they feel about it?
Mm.
Love it.
Why is it that that producers will, maybe they would even know this, but then they'll revert to back to telling it instead of asking those questions?
The same reason so many people are bad at golf because they've had so many bad reps to begin with, and
Right.
they know what they should do, but in the moment thinking takes a lot of work, and so once you become preoccupied with all the other things, you just naturally fall back to what's comfortable. So this is a skill that you need to really retrain your brain and get into the habit of asking lots of questions. And so you talked about, that you continually talk to your staff in little bites about things. You would want to continually reinforce the value of asking questions
Mm.
and getting them to do the same thing. The beauty of it is you don't have to carry the conversation. You ask the question, you take a breath, you let that person talk, you display good listening skills, you ask another question, you let them talk. It's actually a lot easier when you learn how to ask questions as opposed to a monologue.
Love it. Love it. It's almost like you're helping them do the thinking for them instead of throwing it in their court and they might not connect the dots.